Welcome back to my dry climate cutting garden. It's the end of June and I wanted to tell you which plants have been able to withstand heat waves and a 5-week drought. My garden is located in continental Spain and I'm working with clay soil. I'm growing where drip irrigation isn't an option for me, so I'm currently watering my garden every 4 days. My objective is to discover which plants can handle the harsh conditions that also make great cut flowers. In this video, I'll tell you which ones make the cut and which ones aren't as resilient as I'd hoped. I hope that by sharing my journey, you can get some ideas and inspiration. If you want to skip to a specific flower, hover over the timeline of the video and you'll see the chapters. On the screen, you can see the specific details of my growing conditions. At the beginning of the month, roses and Sweet William Dianthus were still available for flower arrangements. These plants have really been drought tolerant and heat tolerant too. What's interesting is the Sweet William even comes back for me as a perennial year after year. Last spring, I planted Campanula or Canterbury bells. I'm going to keep this in my collection because she's really tolerant of the clay soil that hasn't been worked too much, as well as conditions from partial sun to full sun. For usable stems that are slimmer for flower arrangements, they recommend pinching, but I guess mine just made all of these branches. I didn't have to pinch. Many growers sow biennials around May, June to get in the ground and establish for the next year. Well, our summer conditions are a little bit too harsh for any type of establishment. So if I want a biennial plant, I have to plant in spring to then get the following spring. That's just the reality of growing in really harsh conditions. But anyways, this one is really worth the wait. I love Canterbury bells. The green element you see here in this arrangement is Bells of Ireland. This is an annual that self-seeds and grows in compacted clay soil that hasn't been worked yet. I'm so glad to have this one in my garden. The best time to harvest for arranging is before the thorns start to form. One plant that I tried that didn't really turn out as I had expected was painted sage. This one was really easy to start from seed. I planted both in the fall and late winter. It gave a nice plant, but what I was really growing it for were those tips that can be white, blue, or pink. I don't know if it's my growing conditions or what, but the tips were really thin and kind of insignificant in arrangements, so going forward I won't be sowing this one again. An annual that I'll always have in the garden is Elegant Clarkia. I'm really pleased with how she can grow in partial sun all the way till full hot baking sun. And this one will self-seed and grow in clay soil that hadn't been worked so much yet. I really like the tall spikes in arrangements, and if cut at the right time, she really does have a long vase life. I cut her when just a couple of the bottom flowers are blooming, and then she continues to bloom up the spike. I pinched, and the side branches were long enough for arrangements, so going forward I'll be pinching. I know that I won't have to take the time to sow her because she did self-sow around the garden. I grow silver tansy. This one looks exactly like feverfew and gives me the same texture at the same time, but this one is perennial and it has silver foliage, so it can handle really hot sun. In my experience, my feverfew has wilted. So this silver tansy with the pretty little blooms and one mound takes up 2 feet wide, really, and gives me, I think at one point I counted 15 stems on one plant. So this one really satisfies my need for filler in June arrangements. Going forward, silver tansy. She even grows in compacted clay soil. I saw her self-seeding over by the fire pit where it's maximum compacted. Really happy with this one. Annual Candytuft grown in a container. She was blooming despite the dry heat and made a great element in flower arrangements. Next year, I'll be supporting her with net so I can get her stems to be straight. She does want to plop over and bloom on her from her side branches. But anyways, I was pleasantly surprised because I thought this was just going to be a short ornamental plant. Ammobium, or winged everlasting, bloomed right about the same time as my silver tansy, and they look pretty similar. So I wasn't really using her for fresh arrangements, but it turns out that she makes a really nice dried element. I do appreciate that she was able to tolerate the dry heat and the clay soil. So I think going forward, I will be sowing her again. It was my first spring getting sweet peas, and wow, the scent is unforgettable. But I don't think I'll be going forward sowing her again because she required extra watering, and the purpose of my garden is to keep it water-wise, tolerant of dry heat and droughts, so I won't be able to entertain this one again. I'm always putting Strawflower to the test to see how much she can handle because I need the most of her as possible for dry flower crafts. So what I learned this time is she really does not want to be planted in clay soil that hasn't been worked a lot. Lesson learned. But anyways, what I love about her is that she can be planted in late winter when it's still cold. I'm really pleased with lamb's ear. This perennial can handle full hot sun. I love the leaves. I love the spike element in pink arrangements. I'll be putting this in multiple places knowing just how hardy she is. Nigella, or Lavender mist, is also really resilient. Planted in a clay area that hadn't been worked too much, and also blooming and not wilting regardless of the dry heat that had already come. So this one is a keeper. Larkspur self-seeds and is really hardy in compacted clay areas. Not only that, I found that if you pinch her, those side branches become really long. I measured 12 to 15 inches. Only one giant poppy plant survived, but I will be trying again because when the dry heat came, her leaves didn't wilt and she went on to bloom and create the seed pot that I was looking for. I grew double hollyhock for ornamental purposes, but to my surprise, the blooms, when they dry and fall, they make really nice dried flowers. So I plan to use those for crowns. Going forward, I'm always going to sow double hollyhocks. Lilies are a really nice focal flower that can handle dry heat and droughts, mostly because her bulb sits so low in the ground that she can still access that moisture when it gets hot. I love that this plant is a perennial and it comes back each year, giving me even more blooms. I collect different types of lavender. This one is great for dried flower arrangements, but Dutch lavender is the best for tall, fresh flower arrangements because the flower portion is much bigger. It's also known as giant lavender. Drought tolerant and even tolerating the hottest parts of the garden. An annual wildflower that self-seeds in the yard is Cowslip. Cowslip is really pretty, dainty little flowers on sprays. Needs to be netted, needs to be pinched, but they're really pretty. And then later in dried flower arrangements, they add a really cute little ball element that I love. Not a flower, but very important that this pajama onesie scares away birds. So if I need them to stay away from my sunflowers or poppies, I'm gonna take her out because it works. A drought-tolerant perennial that is multiplying in my garden that I really appreciate is this perennial cornflower known as Centaurea scabiosa. This one is incredible for fresh arrangements and dried. And the vase life is amazing. You can cut her even before the petals open, and she will continue blooming in the vase. When the dry heat came and there was a drought, Yarrow is still dependable. She continues blooming. I even like the really tall one, the fern leaf yarrow. The blooms are yellow and very firm. I also like to use the fern foliage in May arrangements. Super pretty. I was introduced to Verbascum this year because a wild version showed up in the garden. So being as drought tolerant as she is, going forward, I'm going to get the cultivars. Long vase life. Goldenrod is definitely able to handle clay soil and dry, hot heat. Cut when just a few flowers have started to open. Monarda or bee balm was drought tolerant and heat tolerant when the heat started to come, and is also a really pretty flower in flower arrangements, so she's here to stay. Old-fashioned carnation or florist carnation is a perennial that I have planted in full sun and can handle the cold, wet conditions of winter, followed by the dry heat and drought in summer. From this plant, I've been able to clone simply by cutting a stem and sticking it in the ground right next to her, right next to the mother plant in late winter, and it rooted. So I've got a little patch going, gives me really long vase life for floral arrangements, and really the best time to cut is when you can start to see the petals, even if the bud hasn't opened. I really appreciate this plant. One evening in the middle of June, it rained. Euphorbia Snow on the Mountain is a real dry heat warrior. I direct sowed her when the nights were consistently above 10 degrees Celsius, and knowing just how dry heat tolerant she is, I think I'll try in succession sow her next year. Over the years, I've learned that the toughest plants, the ones that can handle the dry heat and the droughts, are the ones that are planted in fall. That way they have time to establish before the challenges come. I'm on a mission to prove that even gardens with water restrictions can grow cut flowers. Stick around and I'll share with you my journal notes from July. Thank you for watching. See you then.